This is Your Voice, Your Future, Town Hall.
You know, when I think about why they're ordinary and extraordinary people, I believe it's that little extra. And what is that little extra that gives people a running chance of at least experiencing the so-called the American dream? For my life, I grew up with a mother and a father. It was the best Department of Health, Education, and Welfare I had growing up. I also grew up with discipline, work ethic, sacrifice, but also I had to go to church on Sunday. Church taught me right from wrong. It taught me to love my neighbor. It taught me not to be selfish. And it taught me not to envy what someone else had. It taught me to work hard. And it also taught me about 10 commandments and not 10 suggestions. So tonight, I'm so honored to have the Secretary of the Department of Juvenile Services on, incredible personality. It's no stranger, know where she walks in the room. And we have our State Attorney, Ivan Bates, joining us today, and then Todd Scott. But we keep having the same conversation again and again and again. Juvenile delinquency, prisons, no fathers in the household, kids not understanding right and wrong. And you would think, with the intellectual capital in America, not that you're gonna ever solve the entire problem, but for the majority of the kids, they can enjoy the same kind of success that we've had in life. So, you know, I wanna start with you, actually. What were your ingredients that made the difference in your life, that is lacking today in the kids you see, not just in Baltimore, but just throughout the country?
Yes, I want to say my mother was one very disciplinarian, and I did not want to disappoint her. I did not want to disappoint her. She worked so hard. I come from Latrobe Homes housing projects, and I saw how much she struggled. And she gave me every opportunity, and she believed in me. And that's what it takes. And I think in some cases, not to make excuses, but some youth and young adults don't have that mother or that father. But I had that mother who played the role of both mother and father.
You know, Secretary Tolentino, what agonizes you in the stillness of the night? Because I know you want these kids to succeed. There's no question you want these kids. But what it is that you wish you could change, that could be better, to better help you do your job and do it effective so you don't keep coming back to these issues and you see where these kids end up? What is it?
You know, I think we're always looking for what that right strategy is, what that right intervention is, because not everything works for every kid, and it's always a moving target. So what keeps me up at night is making sure that we are continually building a system that has the supports our young people need.
What is that system?
That system looks like when a young person comes to our attention, we're able to have a long conversation. We're able to do an in-depth assessment, identify their risk, their needs, and put those supports around them. You know, you talked about like what was that little extra something. For us at DJS, that extra something is providing opportunity and support for our young people.
So Attorney Bates, can the law play a role in giving these kids a better chance at opportunity? And how does the law play a role, if it's going to play a role?
You know, our hope is that the law doesn't get involved with young people, because by that time, we're the last line of defense, unfortunately. You want to make sure that young people, everybody follows the law. But by the time you've broken the law and you're standing in front of a judge or a juvenile magistrate, then you no longer have quote-unquote control over what's going to happen with your life. You have to now, you're in the system, unfortunately, and you have to follow the rules and regulations of other individuals. Our hope and goal is that young people don't end up in the criminal justice system in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But when they do, the job for prosecutors is to make sure we protect the community, and sometimes we have to, also protect young people from themselves as well.
Secretary Tolentino, I'm going to stay with you. Critics of recent, I heard what you said, but overall, there's these overall public safety concerns. How do you respond to concerns that Maryland's juvenile justice reforms have moved too quickly without adequate infrastructure in place?
We're building a framework that is going to support our young people. We have been supporting our young people for a very long time, and we're looking at how we can always strengthen that. So whether it's having the residential facilities that meet the needs of our young people, or those prevention and intervention programs, so hopefully we see them not get deeper into the system, we have to have all of that. And that's how we build a system that meets those diverse needs across the continuum, so that we have different levels of accountability to support our young people and create those safer communities.
Do you actually believe, Todd, that these kids understand right from wrong? Do you think they have a moral compass? Do you think they have the kind of education to help them navigate this? Is part of the issue here is a failed school system?
They do have a conscience. They do.
They do.
They really and truly want to do better. In certain cases, they get caught up in trying to satisfy a friend of theirs, or doing certain things that they know they should not be doing because of peer pressure. I will say this, the ones that come into the We Rise program, and when we have them for a period of time, they're surrounded by people who've been in the program for 2, 3+ years on a consistent basis. 2, 3 times per week they're checking in, they're coming to work, they earn at least a minimum of $20 an hour. And when they start competing with each other in a healthy competition way, and they're away from those peer pressures that are negative, and they come to the We Rise program, they're saying, I'm involved in a program that's helping me understand how to build for entrepreneurship, how to open up a bank account. We take them to open up bank accounts. And when they start seeing that, they start moving away from those negative influences and being around positive influences. So they get a chance to go on field trips. Exposure equals opportunities. We team up with Dave Bramble, MCB, we take them on field trips to see construction sites being built. And then we have a block of houses, so they have constant work, and they're getting jobs coming through our program in various fields and industries that they want to go into, but they come through our program first, and then the nonsense stops and their lives change.
Mr. Bates, critics of recent juvenile justice reform argue that prosecutors now have less time to gather the evidence before cases must be adjudicated. How does that affect your ability as the state attorney to successfully prosecute serious offenses?
Look, Maryland recently passed a law to make, if you're juvenile and you have an illegal handgun, or if first-degree assault, your case, instead of starting the adult system, now will start in the juvenile system. The big difference is this. If a young person is incarcerated, then our office has 30 days from the date on which they've pretty much been incarcerated. We're supposed to have the case adjudicated or tried. If they're not incarcerated, we have 60 days. Well, a lot of times it takes longer than that to put together the evidence. And that's basically, we're afraid to make sure, we need to make sure that we can comply with those timing conditions. And it's difficult because the police department, they have so many cases. So you say you have a handgun, you need DNA. It takes 4 months probably to get the DNA. So those timing constraints are something that we're really concerned about. The prosecutors, by and large, when it came to that law, we were not opposed, but we said we need 3 years to have the opportunity to implement this law properly. And these are the types of things we're talking about. We need more prosecutors in Baltimore City and across the state, because now we are going to have more juvenile cases. We're going to probably have about 120 more juvenile cases than we had before in the juvenile system in terms of starting right then and there. And we also need to have more individuals, because a juvenile, once they are arrested, they now, instead of going to the court and going to the adult side and seeing a judge, they have to see the juvenile magistrate or juvenile judge. And that must be done before the next day. And so we have to have a lot more moving pieces in the juvenile system. So we're going to do everything we can to start the system, make it work. But consequently, to be honest, I suspect that we're going to have a lot fewer kids being held accountable because we just don't have the resources at this moment in time, and we don't have the infrastructure and the system to do it the proper way.
Now, Madam Secretary, I know you want to respond to that, but before you do, does Maryland currently have enough beds, treatment facilities, intervention programs, and mental health resources to handle the growing demands of the juvenile system?
You know, we do, and it's because we've been serving this population for decades. The majority of young people who are charged in the adult system, nearly 85%, either return to the juvenile system or have their cases dismissed. So that means the Department of Juvenile Services is already serving this population, and we've been building a continuum to strengthen how we serve this population. I really believe the General Assembly passed a really well-balanced public safety approach to align Maryland with the rest of the country and what we know works best to get the best outcomes for our young people. And what we'll see with the new law going into effect in October is that young people are going to be able to get those services and those interventions faster. They're going to be able to get to programs like Todd Scott's sooner and get the benefits of those interventions. And it puts the state's attorneys in the driver's seat to say, hey, these are the offenses that we think should go to adult court. They can ask the juvenile court to send those young people right back up to adult court.
What is problematic with what she just stated?
Well, first she said 85%. It's not 85%. It's not. What they don't realize, a lot of people don't understand the way the system works in the sense that it's 55% of the cases in Baltimore City last year that were in the adult system went to the juvenile system. But out of that 55%, 25% were a plea because we had the opportunity to put our case together to let the juvenile see the evidence, and the juvenile, we said, hey, we think you could receive services, and now they want to plead guilty, but now that changes. Now that juvenile is not going to want to plead guilty. We're not going to have the evidence in time, and therefore we don't have time to really do the case the way we need to. And they still would be able to get the programming if they pled guilty. But if they're not found fact sustained, they're not going to get the programming. And those are the types of things that we're really concerned about. Once again, I think we without a doubt, we all want the same thing for all the children. We want what's best. However, the problem for us is simple. We feel this was a bill that was thoroughly rushed. The prosecutors were vilified for standing up, trying to say, hey, let's hold up, make sure that we have the things necessary so that we as prosecutors and everybody else can handle the new influx of work and cases, but it didn't happen. We're going to do the best we can as prosecutors, but I think we have to allow the community to understand that from a standpoint, we have to hire more prosecutors, we have to have better infrastructure, that the system just wasn't ready for that.
Are you shaking your head in agreement, or?
I'm hearing State's Attorney Bates, and I think what is going to strengthen this approach as we move towards implementation of these reforms is working together. And we are always here to have the conversations, to think about how we can have the shared solutions and support a system that gets our young people what they need and helps us get those public safety outcomes that, again, that I agree with State's Attorney Bates, that we all want to see for our young people. And we don't disagree on the data. The 55% I agree are what comes back to juvenile court. It's the other 30% that are generally dismissed.
You know, it's interesting you mention that because on our way over here, we were reviewing the crime numbers. And from our data, it appears jurisdictions like Prince George's County and right here in Baltimore City are the areas with the highest level of juvenile crime. Can you tell us which of those jurisdictions have the highest concentration of juvenile crime?
You know, we see the highest impacts of gun violence in Prince George's County, Baltimore City, as well as Montgomery County, and a little bit more in this metro area. And that's why we've designed programming to intervene intentionally to prevent gun violence in our communities. And we've seen also our local governments, we've seen our state's attorneys all prioritize reducing violent acts in our community by all doing our part. Not one agency can hold this on our own. We all need to do our part. And when we do, we get to see the historic declines that we are experiencing in Maryland right now.
Do you ever think your hands are tied?
No, I don't think my hands are tied. I think that I am able to put together the right interventions for our young people. Now, it's hard. This is tough work. But luckily, I have a huge dedicated staff that show up every day for our young people that come to this work because they want to help our young people. We have community-based partners that want to help our young people, and we have really strong partners in our justice system that we all want the same thing. We're all looking for the same goal, and sometimes we disagree how to get there, but conversations, communication help us design those solutions that help us get there together.
This is why this is your voice, your future, and we're having this conversation tonight, and we'll be back. And welcome back to the broadcast tonight. What would a town hall be without having the people in the audience who are most impacted by this have an opportunity to ask questions? And so we're going to go to our studio audience, and Chanel Dixon has a question to Attorney Bates. Chanel?
What strategies have been most effective in addressing gun violence in Baltimore?
Thank you, Chanel. Mr. Bates?
Thank you. When I look at gun violence, you know, 4 years ago when I ran, I said one of the things I was going to do was focus on repeat violent offenders. What we realized is that in Baltimore City, there are about 8,000 violent individuals that were repeat violent offenders that ran around with guns, robbing, shooting, and killing. Our office has said if you're a repeat violent offender, we will invoke what's called a minimum mandatory, which means you're found guilty, you go to prison. So we've taken about 4,000 to 5,000 of those repeat violent offenders off the street. So what does that mean? What that means is when an individual is no longer in the community robbing, shooting, and killing, that now they're in jail, that individuals can be safe. They come out. And now you also then see some of the other programs, such as the Monzi's programs, the mayor runs. Now they have the opportunity to give that conversation to have people turn their life around. So I couldn't say it's just only one program. It's everybody working collaboratively that has really been the key and the success to turning around the gun violence. However, when the prosecutor is not putting the killers and the shooters in prison, then no matter what happened, they will still be in the community robbing, shooting, and killing. And when one person gets shot, oftentimes another person picks up a gun to go ahead and try to shoot them again.
You know, Madam Secretary, how does the Department of Juvenile Services determine whether a juvenile should be detained or released?
So there's a few things we do. When a young person is brought to our attention, generally law enforcement will ask if this young person can be detained. When they do that, we use a validated risk assessment tool to help us identify risk so that we can make a decision that is in the best interest of that young person and the community. We can choose to detain the young person, we can choose to release them on electronic monitoring or supervision in the community, or we can just straight release them. If we put that young person in detention or electronic monitoring, they do have to go to the court the very next day. But we have certain policies that we put sort of ahead of all of that. If a young person comes to our attention and they are charged with a crime of violence, they are charged with a firearm offense, or they have reoffended while being on electronic monitoring, we will detain them by policy until the next court day.
But it does seem that 80 to 90% of the crimes are committed by the same people. It would seem to me that if you have repeat offenders committing the same kinds of crimes, there would be some strict accountability and responsibility, because the same people commit the same crime. So how is it they're so easy to get right back out in the public and do the same thing over and over again? And these crimes escalate, by the way. They only get worse when they feel there's no accountability.
When we look at our data and we look at the young people we're serving, about 10% of the young people who come to our attention had 2 prior adjudications, meaning they were found guilty 2 prior times of offenses in the community. And as they elevate in their risk, we elevate different interventions to make sure that we are providing that young person the right supports and strategies around them in the most secure environment. We have a continuum of programs. We have treatment programs that are hardware secure. We also have treatment programs that we can implement in the community. The court makes the decision about what level of security that young person will have while they receive the services that they need to get.
So I'm coming to you, don't worry. I haven't forgotten about you. But Attorney Bates, at what point I want to stick with this. Should repeated violent behavior trigger consideration of adult court involvement?
Well, look, to me, it's not adjudication or the facts sustained, meaning they've been found guilty. To me, have they been charged? If they've been charged and they've gotten away with it, then I'm going to look at them coming back into the system as they understand what's going on. And based on their actions, we may, at that moment in time, say, look, this a young person should not be in the juvenile system. I think what we always have to understand, Secretary Tolentino, her job is for the young people. That is her job, to make sure that he does everything possible to give them the support, the direction, the programming. My job and the job of the prosecutor is to protect the community. And so we're not necessarily seeing a young person. If you have one arrest for a gun, you've had the opportunity. The second arrest, that tells me you want to be in the adult system. And that tells me you understood the first time when you had the opportunity to have the programs, because the third arrest, you may pull that trigger. And now that, unfortunately, could take someone's son or daughter away from them.
So I want to come back to you. This is a question out of respect. And people change. When you first come on the job, that's one reality, but when you're in that job, working that system, it's a different reality. So when you first came on these airways, when you were appointed, you said that any juvenile who violates their home detention, and I want to read this accurately, would be held accountable and detained for their actions. But then later, you walked that back, saying they would be detained for a day until they see a judge. But, and this is my opinion of my researchers, it does appear that your office continues to advocate for the release back onto home monitoring at these hearings. So how is holding them a day or two before ending them right back home really hold them accountable for any of their actions?
So that policy change is one I put into place almost a year ago, after hearing a lot of feedback from our stakeholders, like State's Attorney Bates and law enforcement, that they were concerned that young people were reoffending while on electronic monitoring. So we do what we do. We looked at the data. They weren't wrong. So we made a policy change. And if a young person comes to our attention for violating the conditions of their electronic monitoring by reoffending, we will detain them. That's a decision point that the Department of Juvenile Services can make. I can't make the continued decision. That young person then has to be presented to the court, where the state's attorney makes their argument, their public defender or the child's counsel makes their argument. We provide all the information, and then the court makes the next decision, and then we abide by that. Most young people are staying incarcerated when they violate their electronic monitoring for alleged reoffending.
But you know, Mr. Bates, during the past session, there was a bill that the Scott administration had introduced that would expand access to juvenile records to several city agencies, a bill you were opposed to. Why was that?
Well, look, that bill basically said that we want to go ahead and give, quote unquote, unfettered access to members of the Scott administration to look at all the juvenile records and files. I personally think that's terrible, because the only person who should have access to juvenile files should be DJS and law enforcement. I believe they want to do some diversion programs. I believe DJS and Secretary Tolentino, they do a phenomenal job with the diversion programs such as that. Our concern is that we had an IG report that said that there was a member of the Scott administration of Monzi, the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood and Safety Engagement, allegedly had some juvenile records, 150 some they downloaded and sent to themselves on a private email. That's against the law. So if we're already showing we don't have a system of checks and balances to stop this behavior, why are we going to expand it? Why do we need to give access to numerous individuals within City Hall? And that is something that I was strongly, strongly opposed to. We asked to say, well, if you're going to do it, at least make sure that the state's attorney's office can figure out what's going on. But they didn't even want to put that amendment in. And that scares me, because we have to protect our young people. There's no way to figure out if predators are there getting this information to go after our children. but we know DJS and Secretary Tolentino have a strong policy to make sure that they safeguard the information of these young people, and so does law enforcement. We're the only ones that should have that information.
Look, we need to be able to share information where it's appropriate so that we can collectively serve young people. And we do have some strict laws, and we should, State's Attorney Bates is absolutely correct that we should care for these records very much and make sure that they are confidential. But we do have to be able to communicate so we can have programs to serve our young people. We need to be able to talk to programs like Todd Scott's to be able to make sure that we can prepare to serve that individual. One of the things that I'm pleased about with that change in legislation is the safeguard the sponsors put in place, which is the required MOU for any specific sharing with the city. That means that we will have an agreed way how we are going to keep information safe, what that's going to look like, and how we can then audit and have some quality assurance to make sure we're doing this in the best possible way to protect our young people.
You know, you listen to this conversation, Todd. Are there blind spots or something they just don't get about young people in crime?
No, I think they get it. I've been working with Juvenile Services now, Department of Juvenile Services. I was working since 2021, and I volunteered to bring my program in there. And I realized that the people that work for Department of Juvenile Services, they get it. They really do. And it's really and truly up to the individual. And when they have services that, like my program, we're very strict. So if you come to our program and you apply and we accept you to our program, we have requirements. You can't smell like smoke. You can't.
You mean marijuana?
Exactly.
Please.
You can't.
Yes, of course.
We have these requirements. So with 2 or 3 different occurrences, you can no longer participate. So when we have, they pass people over to us, and then we be able to take on these young people, and then they do a fantastic job when they stay committed into the program, because if they're not, just like on any job, we try to get them prepared to be financially independent, meaning they be self-sufficient. We teach them how to have careers, we teach them how to have ownership, how to invest. They get bank accounts open, they save money, 30% of their earnings. We pay them, again, over $20 per hour. But they have to show us what they really want. We have people coming in from Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County, Montgomery County to be a part of the program. And so it's fantastic, and it all started from us working with Department of Juvenile Services.
So Mr. Bates, we were combing through the state budget and realized $500,000 was being taken from your budget unless your office put together a statewide juvenile crime report. And you know, I had this epiphany. How did it come about, and why would you be responsible for the entire state's juvenile numbers? It was baffling.
Well, I'll say this. It was baffling to myself and my team when we found out about this 3 weeks ago.
It was just 3 weeks ago.
Just 3 weeks ago we found out. But it appears that there was a state senator from Baltimore City that, because of my strong stance against the juvenile law, wanted to make sure that I was going to receive a strong message that I need to get along and do what they want me to. That will never happen. I will always fight for the people in the community. The other thing I don't think people always understand, that $500,000 is part of a $1.7 million grant that doesn't have anything to do with juvenile, but has everything to do with the funding of my violent crime prosecutors. $500,000, that means we can't have 4 homicide prosecutors, which means we've lost 80 cases, which means that's 80 murderers running around the streets of Baltimore City. But I must say, thank you very much for my public safety partner right here, because we immediately made a telephone call to Governor Moore, and Governor Moore's team, led by his chief of staff, Mr. Davis, immediately sat down with us and said, no, we're going to take care of you. You're not going to lose the money. Had an opportunity to talk to Senator Ferguson this week, and he said, I'm going to make sure you don't lose the money either. And thank goodness, because what they didn't realize was that there's no way that I have this data. However, DJS has it. We'll work closely with them to make sure we give them this report. However, I think it's very sad that I did my job as president of MSAA, as a prosecutor, and I just viewed something differently. But yet, they want to make sure they punish me. It's not about me. It's about protecting the community and the residents and citizens of Baltimore City.
Your voice, your future. I'm Armstrong Williams, and we're at our WBFF studios in Baltimore, Maryland, and we're live, and we'll be back. So Jaheim Culp is on the mic, and he has not a question, but a statement. Jaheim, the floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Jaheim Culp, part of the We Rise program for almost 3 years now, and I just wanted to come on here to say thank you to Mr. Scott and the We Rise team for giving me an opportunity and helping me change my life for the greater or better. But in that case, we are working on houses and stuff, and we're trying to change the community and the youth for young brothers like me and Cole.
Thank you, Jaheim.
Thank you.
You know, one of the things that we, as media, that what we're doing, and you know, I'm blessed to represent the Baltimore Sun as an owner, and then this program here. But I take that very serious. I think it's important to be fair and across the board. And sometimes what we focus on are the worst moments for agencies, the worst moments for the state attorney. If we forget to remind the public that there's a lot of good that you do together that people don't talk about, because the good doesn't necessarily make the news. But the Bible tells me, and I'm an unapologetic person who believes in God, that if you find something good in something, praise it. So I like to talk about the things that you both agree that you get right, that sometimes we don't hear enough about. And I'll start with you, Madam Secretary.
Yeah, I think what we're getting right is we are providing our young people opportunity, like you just heard, and it makes all the difference. When we can provide our young people with the right connections to the right supports, to the right programs, the right interventions, they will take it, and they will go and they will reach their goals. They will see the possibility that they can do something different. And most of our young people take advantage of that. Even when they come back to us a few times, there's a moment when most of our young people are going to connect to their treatment, they are going to connect to the program, and they are going to make that change. And we just have to stick by them throughout that process. And that's what's going right. We stay with our young people, we stay with our families until we get the outcomes that we want to see.
Take us through a trajectory of what it takes to take a child from here to where you want them to be, the kind of work that goes into it, and the kind of partners that must be involved to really save that kid and give them that hope and put them on that path.
It takes every one of us in the public safety system, first of all, but it takes countless numbers of people at the Department of Juvenile Services, from our intake workers who are the first line that meet with that family and that young person to understand what's going on, to our partners in community who intervene and provide that support, to our staff who works in our deepest level facilities to be able to be there for our young people. They show up every day. It takes every single one of them. And we are moving into this system. We are changing our system to be able to have a shared language. Regardless of where you work at the Department of Juvenile Services, you will be trained in providing cognitive behavioral therapy to our young people. So every contact with a young person becomes an opportunity to teach a skill, practice a skill, and use a skill. And we will make sure that that is a constant around the entire culture of our agency.
Mr. Bates, what is the proper balance between accountability and what she just discussed, rehabilitation? Do young people today fully understand the consequences of carrying a firearm? And then the other thing is, what responsibility belongs to parents, schools, communities, and then the government?
Well, you know, look, I can't speak for young people in reference to that. I've had numerous questions and conversations with them. Remember, I'm not only talking as a prosecutor, I was a defense attorney, so I was the attorney sitting next to the young person who carried a gun. They told me they understood what they were doing. They told me but they felt I needed the protection. When I asked them the protection from whom, oftentimes they said, I don't know, just, you never know. So that tells me a lot of times it's the peer pressure. but also I do understand the young person's brain. However, as a prosecutor, I have to think about the community. How does the community balance holding this young person accountable, not throwing this young person's life away, and what does that look like? And so we do need to look at the parents. We need to look at the parents to see what is going on, and are the parents going to be held accountable? Look, we had a case in Baltimore City where parents participated in the attack on another young person with their own child. And those parents were held accountable, and that is the type of parental accountability that we must look at in the criminal justice system. We're seeing too many parents that have decided, you know what, you do what you want and I'm gonna live my life. But being a parent is a 24-hour job, 365 days. Look, we were talking a little earlier and commiserating about being parents, the good and the bad. At the end of the day, our jobs are important, but there is no more important job than being a parent to our children. Because our children will go out, they take our last name, they take our lessons in life, and they go make their own way, and they make a better future for everybody. And that's why parental accountability with juveniles is so important. That's the first line of defense to make sure their children have the guardrails they need to be successful.
So Todd, from your experiences, are gangs and social media contributing to this increased juvenile violence?
I will say social media does, because the youth today are so focused on looking at what people think about them, what people are saying about them, so it causes them to react because they have access to see who's talking about them. That's a very important piece that we're overlooking, is the fact that social media and having access to see who's talking about them and what they're thinking about them really has an impact on how they react. I want to say one thing about City State's Attorney Ivan Bates, and this means a lot to me because we hide behind numbers, we look at reports, we look at data, and we speak on that. But for him to take time after having conversations over the course of years, meetings and discussions about the program, for him to come out and spend pretty much a half day to watch the program at work and to see and interview the youth that were taking part in rebuilding the houses and interview them one-on-one, that made a difference, and it made him realize that, made me realize also, we need more of that. We're sitting behind the desk and we're looking at numbers, we're not getting out like he did and spent time and saw the program and said, oh, this really, really and truly is a good program. And I commend you for that.
Thank you.
It meant a lot to me.
Did you invite the secretary?
Well, the secretary is always invited.
Is this an invitation?
Yes, this is an invitation. Thank you.
Yeah.
We go way back. We've worked on this program since the first time I was at the Department of Juvenile Services.
Madam Secretary, what is the biggest misconception the public has about juvenile crime?
I think the biggest misconception is that all our young people are doing all the things and that they aren't changing their behavior. We know that our young people are changing their behavior. We know the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of the young people we serve don't come back into our systems. We look at all that very closely so we make sure we're using the right types of interventions. And I think that's the biggest misconception. And that I think we also struggle to really understand something that you had spoken about earlier are the successes. The things that our young people are doing really well in community. We don't talk enough about that, and I think that we miss that storyline sometimes.
How much of I know self-worth, self-esteem, if you know you can speak, you have a skill set, you've gotten a quality education, it gives you a certain kind of pride, and it makes you less vulnerable. How big of a role does that play?
Plays a huge role. One of the best parts of my job is being able to talk to our young people and hearing about their success when they earn a certificate or when they accomplish something, when they graduate and they're able to go back to that courtroom and show the judge what they've done. I mean, it's incredibly empowering for them. It builds that confidence. It sees that they learn that they can do hard things and that they can take advantage of these opportunities that they are given.
I don't want anyone to lose sight that no matter how much we have these conversations where it does seem that we have different approaches on how to solve this issue, you should never underestimate how much everybody on this panel actually cares. They just have different approaches to solving this issue. but never underestimate the sacrifice, because, you know, officials like yourselves, what you sacrifice, what you endure, what people say about you on social media, the letters, the things that happen to you in public, the world has become so cruel. And you make a huge sacrifice, so I want to be the first to show respect and honor for what you do every day, because your goal ultimately is to get it right for these kids. This is Your Voice, Your Future. I'm Armstrong Williams, and we'll be back. It's true. So, you know, all of us have a journey, and sometimes our journeys can take us into the darkest places. And so my man here, Cole Jenkins, on the mic, attempted murders twice. When he was 16 was his first. And the story is not about the fact today that he committed those murders and he's been involved in a life of crime and he's gone through juvenile services. It's that he's been able to find his footing, find his moral compass, and set an example that you can overcome some of the worst of situations. Tell us a little bit about your situation, Cole.
Yeah, how you doing? My name is Cole Jenkins. It started off, I was actually 15 when I first got my first charges, gun charge. So at first it started off because, you know, the juvenile, it was a little like a slap on the wrist at first. So at first, you know, I came home, went home the next day, put me on the box, house detention and stuff. A year came after, I got locked up again. I was still 15. I came home January 29th of 2024. 15 months later, I got locked up again for 2 attempted murders. I just want to say that at the end of the day, it's more about your mindset, and on top of that, it's about the people that you have around, you know. First of all, I just want to thank Mr. Todd, my boss. I met him when I was in jail. Victor Cutter, actually, it's like a halfway juvenile house for, you know, young incarcerated juveniles that are trying to make their way home. So I actually believe like this was the only program all of my whole entire life, like being locked up. This was the only program that actually helped me, you know, helped me want to do better, because some juvenile people my age, some children my age want to do better, but they don't have the things that they need to do better, or the people to stand by their side to do any type of better. You know, sometimes it might be any like house dramas, house problems, so they might not be at home, stuff. They might be out in the streets, and one thing goes to another, might lead to another.
But you know, you said something. I felt something when you said about a slap on the wrist. It seems as though you're saying if the system had been tough on you and it made you more accountable, that it probably would have stopped your crime spree.
I want to say it's 50-50 because...
But you gave it the impression you didn't take it serious when they slapped you on the wrist.
50-50, because at the end of the day is...
Were they too lenient?
My first time, I want to say I was scared. I was like, oh damn, I'm not even locked up.
Was the system too lenient? Should they have held you more accountable and a more harsh punishment to get your attention?
No, I say it's 50-50. That's all. It's not a yes or no type of answer, because it's a lot of children that do good their first time, they never reoffend again. And then you have the other kid who's gonna keep on reoffending, but not because of the streets or not because of they're not lenient. I mean, or they were lenient.
You have a father in the household?
No, I don't have a father.
You were raised by your mother?
Yes, my mother passed away though.
How old were you when your mother passed away?
When I was 16.
Wow. Did you finish high school?
Yes, sir.
Are you going to college?
Yes, sir.
Is crime behind you?
Crime is not behind me.
It's not? Is it
like meaning as, oh yes, crime is behind me. Yes, sir. No, crime is most definitely behind me.
Do you have a moral compass to understand right from wrong?
Yes, sir.
You go to church?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Believe in Christ.
Believe in Christ. That's the answer. All right, brother, thank you.
Thank you.
Give that brother some love. What do you hear this, Madam Secretary?
You know, I really hear that when we provide young people the connection to the right opportunity, they can do amazing things. And our young people are more than the mistake they made. They are able to take advantage of opportunity. We have to stick with them through their journey. And not everyone's going to look exactly the same. Sometimes it's going to take a few interventions. Sometimes they're going to be able to find that right thing right off the bat. But we have to stay with our young people. We have to continue to show up for them.
Why don't we talk about faith and spirituality and right and wrong and going to church and God, the things that we grew up on that help us navigate life? Why don't we talk about this thing? Why are people so uncomfortable that materialism, power, wealth doesn't really give true meaning to your life? It doesn't really fulfill you. It's fleeting. Why not? Why?
I'll speak on that. I don't know why, but I know it's a given in my program. And the person you just heard speak, Cole, is a prayer warrior. He's a very spiritual person that leads in our group with prayer. He gets up in the morning and sends a scripture, a word of the day, and that's mandatory in my program to have a belief, because we want you to realize that it's going to take more than just knowing right from wrong. It's going to take more than that to really get you to the place you really want to be.
It doesn't seem like things are getting any better, though. Tell me we're wrong, Mr. Bates. And what is getting better?
Well, look, a couple things. You know, I think when we look at the murder numbers in Baltimore City, they have gotten better. I think when I've looked at some of the numbers with juvenile crime from where they were in 23 and 24, they have gotten better. I do think we're headed in the right direction. Now, I'm not going to lie, I'm concerned with the new law, where it's going to take us, but I'm going to be an optimist. I'm going to say we're going to continue doing the things that we need to do. But I also think that our society's changed greatly, that young people look at things in social media in a way, they look at beefs in a way, and they sometimes make some horrific mistakes. They wish they could take it back, but you know, from dealing with the victims and the victims' families, you can't turn back that clock. I think that we are in a position right now where if our young people and the parents and the families do not understand how important life is and how short life is, that we're going to turn back where we just came from.
You know, I can only imagine how often you come home from the job and you just hug your kids, knowing just how blessed you are when you see what other kids endure without parents.
Absolutely. I'm really grateful for my family and my kids. They're what give me the motivation to show up and do the work every day. But, you know, I get to also see the kids in our system do amazing things as well. And that is what feeds us to continue this work, to continue serving our community, continue building a better system in the state of Maryland.
What needs to improve for you? What do you consider to be success that needs to improve?
I'm really pleased at the momentum the department has taken on and the change that we've put in place in the past year. We've made a lot of great strides, and those numbers are showing that our strategies are working. But we're not at the finish line. Until every person can feel safe in their community, we still have work to do. And when we can get there, then I would say we've done it.
How important is it that you both work together?
It's extremely important.
How important is that collaboration?
It's extremely important. Look, I'm not trying to belittle anybody who's not here, but the individual that sat in the chair before Secretary Tolentino, there really was no true working relationship. We did try, but for whatever reason, we were just on different wavelengths. But once again, wanted the same thing, which was best for the children. Secretary Tolentino, when she got the job, we sat down, we talked. We talked about who we were as people. We talked about our children. We talked about our families. You talked about life. She was a public defender. I'm a prosecutor, but I've also been a defense attorney, where I think the big thing we had first and foremost was respect. We may not always see eye to eye, but there is respect, and we'll make sure that we have that open dialogue. She knows if she needs something, she can call me, and vice versa. You know, when you just raise the issue about the budget issue, I'm asking her in her office for help. And so if we don't work together, we will not be successful. And success looks like this for me. Young people can get in trouble. We have to hold them accountable, but we want to make sure they get the programs, so we give them the guardrails to do the right thing so they don't come in the adult system, in the criminal justice system. And that's what's important. The young person, we're making sure protecting the community because we've invested in our children, and now they're successful members of society.
What is your message for not just parents, but legislatures?
We're going to continue moving this system forward. We're going to continue working within the framework that we have, and we are going to make sure our young people get what they need. And we're going to continue to contribute to better public safety outcomes. And these relationships are critical to doing so, not only with State's Attorney Bates and the other state's attorneys around the state, but also with our law enforcement partners. You know, we have really doubled down on making sure that communication is strong, frequent, and intentional so that we can show up in partnership.
In 30 seconds, Todd, Scott, if there's one thing that works to bring these kids back into a better life and purpose, what is it?
For them to understand the importance of being consistent, being in a program like We Rise, or being consistent on their jobs, being very consistent and understanding what their families and their mothers are telling them, and don't disappoint their families, because they have what it takes, but they just really have to have others to show them and lead them and guide them and hold them accountable.
You know, Mr. Bates, you know, it's always a pleasure to see you. Mr. Scott, it's good meeting you. And Madam Secretary, the fact that you showed up, you care. And it all starts there. We appreciate having you on, and we hope and pray that we can continue these dialogues in the future. And thank the kids for joining us. They're not kids, they're adults. Appreciate your questions and your journey. And thank you for watching this edition of Your Voice, Your Future Town Hall. I'm Armstrong Williams. Have a good night.